we are new media, and that's media level effort right there. That was good work by us.
Yeah.
Good work. Good work. Well done.
Okay.
Good work.
You're an idiot, Keith.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, I know. That's what I love about you, though.
Mm-hmm. Most people.
All right, here we go. Ready?
I'm not ready yet.
Okay, tell me when.
Okay, now I'm ready. Yeah, I had to get centered.
You talk about it privately, we talk about it publicly. This is the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered Podcast. Welcome again to the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered Podcast. I'm your host, Dwiggy Dwiggins, along with Mr. Crazy Uncle Robinson.
Dwiggins.
We've been on a weird one today doing some pods. So tell us about Heather Harmon. She's a 4-time founder, investor, advisor, and author. And the content we had, which was different than our normal pod. Yeah,
it was fun to just sort of have a thoughtful conversation and let it run around to some interesting topics. We talked about Stoic philosophy, which I am a fan of. Mm-hmm. She has a deep Proptech experience background, so we talked about that and how they often get it wrong and the importance of the real estate agent in that process. Builder tech and new home development, how that could be a solution for affordability. And then she was involved with the iBuyer experience. So we talked about what happened to them and what the future could look like.
Her time at Opendoor.
That's right.
It was
good
an
conversation.
She's wicked smart, so you'll enjoy this.
You will enjoy
this conversation from her. Tune in.
Put it in your ears, kids.
Heather, welcome to the show. We're laughing because Keith is an idiot, and I always ask Keith, "Are you ready?" And he's like, "No, I'm not ready." And he goes, "Okay, now I'm ready."
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Heather, thanks for being here. We're excited to chat with you. You're going to regret talking to these two idiots for 45 minutes, but we're going to have a lot of fun things to talk about today because there is no shortage of conversation in our beautiful residential real estate industry.
Nothing to see here. Please move along.
Yeah.
No shortage.
So let's do this. Just give everybody a little quick background on you, how you got into the real estate industry, your career, etc. We'll do a couple rapid fires, and then we'll jump into a lot of juicy conversation today. So,
okay. Well, I'm a 3rd-generation real estate broker, so I have that sort of in my DNA and genetics. Grew up at the Thanksgiving table with that being the proverbial perpetual conversation. My grandmother was the first licensed general contractor in Northern California as a female. And so I also grew up on construction sites and development. She did residential and commercial development. And I was with her all the time. And then my dad also did developing. And I grew up in title companies and open houses. And this is back in the day when you did everything, manual. Like my grandfather would literally fly documents for signatures because this is pre-fax machines. And my grandmother typed contracts on triplicates, so they had to be perfect. And every time she made a mistake, she had to start over.
So we need to explain what triplicates are for
right.
It's here.
Yeah.
You scroll it into the typewriter and you line up the field.
Okay, this is going to take a while because we also have to explain what a typewriter is.
Right.
So
right.
This is going to be a process.
Yeah. So I mean, to say I saw it all, not necessarily. What I didn't see, my grandfather would sit around the table and, tell us about. Sure. And so I grew up in that, but I wasn't supposed to be in real estate. I was supposed to be a doctor. And I went through pre-med school and did all the things to get a science degree. And then still ended up getting my broker's license. And it just didn't leave me. But also my first high school job, and this is unrelated to my grandmother, my best friend's uncle, I believe, started the first Proptech company. He was a lawyer, and also he was a coder, and he recognized that there was this disparity between if you were a landlord wanting to do a background check on a tenant, you had to manually go to the courthouse to check unlawful detainer and eviction records. And so my first job was taking dot matrix paper stacked as tall as I was and entering it into a DOS-based system of unlawful detainer and eviction records. And I was super fast. I was earning like $20 an hour back in 1990, that was a lot of money. And and then I ended up learning the business. And so when I was a student at University of Washington, I was also helping one of the franchisees, because eventually he franchised the business, helping them set up their business and outside of the Seattle area. So that was my first, Proptech experience in 1990, and I just kind of didn't quit. But along the way, I've done some other things, and everything's been in the realm of disruption. Like when mobile phones first started getting apps, I was a part of a project that did and the initial sort of WhatsApp or Telegram, where you could control your text messages in a secure environment. And so we built that company called MyText. And then we had another company with a bunch of runners. I was a runner back then. And we did a social platform for matching runners based on pace. And
you mean like
Joni
going
Benoit,
for a run, like marathons runner?
So any kind of run. We had a marathoner, Joni Benoit Samuelson was, I know Keith loves running.
No, Keith doesn't love running. You know why? There's an ancient Viking proverb that says, never run. You'll only die tired. And I think the Vikings had it right. Just stay there and fight whatever you got to fight. There's no need to work on running. They
had a lot of things right, those Vikings did. Oh my goodness. Well, we did that. And, apparently people do like to run based on their pace with friends. But we didn't get that app scaled.
Get better friends.
And so another one was a digital audio watermarking company that we had a patent on laying an audio watermark inside of a digital audio file and tracking the file as it was going around in transfer. And so this is interesting because at this point, this is like 2005, Pandora's just launched, Napster's just been shut down, and the whole music industry is on fire. Like we can't do music anymore. We're done. We're out. We can't make money. Everything's broken. And so what our product, endeavored to do, and we got to work with some really cool producers and record labels that handle the Beatles and Elvis. I got to work with the Cambridge Institute and the Royal Institute, National Royal Institute for the Blind in London. And so all kinds of applications for this were going on then. Ultimately, what happened in the music industry, right, is that we ended up democratizing music to the customer, to the consumer, and everybody won at the end of the day. And today, it's reported that artists make more money through streaming platforms than they did through physical format distribution, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. And so
interesting. So everybody thought the world was ending and it ended up being okay. Yeah.
It ended up actually being better than okay. Like, I'm not going to say certain parts of the music industry went away entirely, right? Sure. There's entire parts of the manufacturing process that are gone now that no longer exist today. Sure. But overall, we democratize music in a way that the end consumer has a better experience and more artists get to be a part of the presentation of the solution, right?
It's interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's pin that for a second. Yeah. Do a couple quick rapid fires, and we'll come back to your foray back into real estate a little bit. Keith, why don't you start us out on these?
Yes.
Real quick.
First rapid fire. Favorite book or podcast this year, ever, recently? I don't really care about the time frame. Just favorite book or podcast, and more importantly, why?
Okay, so I usually am reading 7 books at once, at least. So it's hard to pick one. I'm definitely going with book, not podcast. I listen to podcasts, but I would say the first book is Marcus Aurelius. And the book is called Reflection or Meditations.
Yeah.
Okay, so this book was written in, we think, 170 AD. Mm-hmm. And Keith's shaking his head like he.
Yeah, you two are gonna nerd out.
I read it every year.
Right. Yeah. This is like by my bed. Like
that's the best translation too. By the way, hold that up so everyone can see.
There you go, everybody.
Look for that if you're. Well, we'll put the link in the.
Okay, so we'll put a link for that. Why is this important, right, Keith? Like, Stoic philosophy is not a religion. It's the idea that we can control certain things. We can control our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, our reactions. And what we can't control, if we relinquish that and act in equanimity, we have peace. And so those are simple things to say, but they're not easy. That's why Marcus Aurelius wrote, this is actually his journal. This was his diary. It wasn't written for an audience. These are his own internal thoughts. He was the Roman emperor at the time. And these are his thoughts about these things.
I'm going to nerd out on this for 1 minute. I apologize, audience. We'll get back to real estate and lawsuits and that shit later. But for someone to be at the height of power, like Marcus Aurelius was at the time, and to read basically his diary, which obsesses about trying to be the best person he could possibly be, is such an interesting dichotomy, because it's so rare to see people with that much. He could literally have anything he wanted. He was the most powerful person in the universe at that time, and he chose to work on himself and try to develop himself and act in a fashion at which he could be proud of. And that for me is everything.
Yeah.
Something our society misses a lot of today.
Yeah.
As well.
That was a good one. All right.
So
nothing
that's
else
the
on
book.
books. Go ahead, James. Ask her who she wants to eat
I
with.
mean,
Good
now
luck.
I'm really intrigued. So if you could have lunch with one person, current or historical, who would it be and why?
Other than Marcus Aurelius.
Other than Marcus.
I know. It's hard to not invite Marcus to that conversation. So lately I've been really missing my friend Ken Jenny. And I feel like he would love to put his white pants on and go to a really nice fancy lunch, have some Chardonnay, and talk about what the hell is going on in this industry. And if you don't know Ken, he was he loved this industry so much.
Yep.
He probably was an advisor to every major company or leader in the industry at some point across his career. He was an advisor to me. He was a good friend. And Ken really wanted the industry to do better. He wanted us to do better. And he called it out all the time. And so I miss him right now.
It's a good one. I don't think many people know who he is, because he would have to be sort of in the inner circles of executive leadership. But Ken was involved in Trulia early on, just for some background. He was a guy that he always, it's your point, he had his suit pants. He always had his Chardonnay. You always knew where he was. And he was always at every event, but he wasn't the person on stage. He was the person behind the scenes, kind of just involved in things. It's a really interesting one that you used. I hadn't heard that name in a while since he passed away. So.
Well, if I got to pick my perfect lunch, I would also invite Stefan Swainpole, because I have the biggest fangirl crush on him. And like, I am his mind, the way he sees the industry and the way he talks about it and is willing to say the hard things.
Like call people Dwiggy.
Yes,
I'm with you.
I am telling you, I would like Ken and Stefan at my lunch, and we
sprinkle in Marcus Aurelius too. It just see what happens. That'd be a hell of a lunch. I'm crashing that.
It would be a hell of a lunch.
There's definitely that. Well, we dropped the podcast with Brad Inman as well, so there's another one to look at. It's a fun one. All right. Let's move to some of the main talking points.
Can I have a background question that she brought up before we dive into the others. You've founded 4 different companies in and around the Proptech space. You've been an investor, developer, advisor for a while now. What do you and I got an Opendoor question too, because you didn't mention it, but you did.
I
used to work there.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the Proptech background specifically yet.
Yeah, so maybe I'll ask that. You were an early employee at Opendoor, right? And the iBuyer thing, I remember when iBuyers first hit the scene. It was like the British were coming. People were running around the conference going, "The iBuyers are coming. The iBuyers are coming. What are we going to do?" And the industry was freaked. A person who could be named later, James, you can mention the name, said, I think it would be 40% market share taken over by iBuyers before they were all done. What happened? What happened to the iBuyer marketplace? And is it over? Are they done? Are they going to come back? Unpack, like, autopsy for me, since you were involved in the space. And this isn't directed at Opendoor. This is just iBuyer as a concept.
Yeah, general question.
Yeah, I can speak to Opendoor because I've been inside the company. And I wasn't, to be clear, I wasn't an early employee. My company was acquired by Opendoor.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that is, that's a distinction. And my company specifically, Bill, was around the mortgage, and I ended up leading their mortgage division, Opendoor Home Loans. We changed the name of it. But anyway, so that's where I fit into that puzzle. But let's first be fair about the judgment of Opendoor taking or not taking market share, like they never came on the scene and said, this is the way everyone should do a transaction. They had a job to be done, and that was to provide certainty. That's it. They're providing certainty. They're saying, hey, seller, here is one way you can sell your house. We're not saying it's going to net you the most money. They never make that claim. But they do make the claim that this is a fast, frictionless, reliable way to sell your house with certainty. So here you go. And they've done that job. They've done that job. And they don't need to penetrate the entire market for them to have a successful business. They don't. They just need a small fraction of the transaction volume for that to be a viable business.
Yeah,
and that's their focus.
I've always said the people who should be most worried about Opendoor are your regional private money fix and flip ground up construction gal person,
100%,
right? Because that's 100%. Really who they're
their data. Yes, they're all over that. They're not missing. They have every needle in a haystack covered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Keith's always been very vocal about it. I agree with him that there's certain, to your point, certainty and convenience of I need to get out. I don't want to deal with it. I've got whatever the circumstances. I need to make this happen. And there should always be that mechanism. For what it's worth, when they started on the scene, I made this comment that there should be an arm of Opendoor in every real estate office.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Meaning agents go out and say, here's general market, here's quick to sell.
Yeah.
This is how there's two different paths that you can take with it.
Oh my gosh, there's even more than that, right, James? Like every seller should have in front of them, here's your iBuyer offer, here's your instant offer. Like get the job done, no friction, you don't have to do all this other stuff. Here's the offer to fix your home, to sell it for maximum value.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
And maybe even here's how we're going to finance that for you.
Yep.
Right. And then here's the open market offer.
Yeah.
Like let's just put it on the market and see what happens. And so, yeah, I think those are three options every seller should have. And for some reason, the industry went, oh, hide the iBuyer offer from the seller. Like let's not show them that.
Okay.
Until we did.
Let me people's perception, because who knows what truth is anymore. But many, I guess, and again, this isn't directed at any specific iBuyer company. It's actually really common in Proptech in general. I've been in rooms, venture capital rooms, where they put up the big whiteboard and they talk about TAM, right? Total addressable market.
Yeah.
And they look at real estate agent and the real estate agent commissions and see that as something that they could attack. Right. And if we could get blah, blah, blah percent of then that'll translate and it looks perfect on this whiteboard. Right.
Yeah.
But they almost always dramatically underestimate the depth of connection and relationship between the real estate professional and their client that they serve.
Yeah.
And when the iBuyers came on the scene, they were not agent friendly. They were not agent. They didn't hate agents. They just didn't care. Right. They felt like they could go get the market share that they needed to with marketing. And this happens a lot.
Yeah.
I guess, why does that happen so much? Right. Why does that happen so much? And that is part of the reason why agents were and continue to be so resistant to Proptech, because they almost never come in and say, no, we want you to be part of the solution. We have a tool. You're the distribution arm for my cool tool.
Yeah.
And so I guess two-part question.
Yeah.
One, why does that happen so often? And then two, how do we get that to not happen in the future?
Yeah. Oh God, such a good question. And we were going to talk about this a little bit because around like how I personally invest or how I evaluate things for investment, right? Yeah. And so I'm gonna answer that question because it answers your question now, right?
That's cool.
So the first thing I look at, like to even go down the road of like, is this a viable investment or a company that's worth investing in, is the team, the people. Everything comes to people. Like, who are they to solve this problem? And why are they qualified to do that? And one of the things that I see in Proptech specifically is people come from out of the industry because they see the TAM and they think, oh, I got this. I'm so much smarter than these people. All I
Right.
need to do is build this. I mean, I saw 3 of them yesterday and I was just rolling my eyes back in my head. Like, you have clearly not done one transaction in your life.
It gets old.
And so that is one piece of the puzzle, is who are the people that are bringing these solutions, right? For the most part, venture capitalists don't understand the nuances of our business. That's one of my roles, is to help them understand what they don't see between the layers of all these different pieces, between the people themselves, the transactions, the legislation, the regulatory, and the licensing environment. And then this B2B channel, when you're trying to go to market through agents or not through agents, how is that actually going to work, right? And so when I'm sitting there looking at the go-to-market or the TAM slide, and I'm listening to the people explain themselves about that, I almost always, I don't think I've ever met a go-to-market slide that I have not pushed back on and had some kind of like, yes, but, conversation with them around the thing that they're not seeing, the wall that they're not even acknowledging in this, the way they've presented their numbers, or the way they're telling me they're going to solve the problem. And what I find by and large is that at least 8 out of 10 will not actually lean in and listen when I ask them a question or I try to push back, for them to go, oh, what do you see there, Heather? What do you know? What do you understand that I'm not seeing? They get defensive and they start telling me why they're right.
Right. Because if your TAM slide's wrong, if your total addressable market slide wrong, then your whole supposition is wrong, right?
And you know what? Every time it's wrong. Every time it's wrong, because they have not considered the myriad of things that are going on in this industry. And so I know that. And what I want to see is, don't boil the ocean for me. Don't tell me how you're going to get, X percent of this total addressable market when you haven't even quantified that number the right way, let alone your actual path to do that and how much you're allocating for costs to do each one of those pieces of the puzzle. None of that is accurate or real.
Well, it's interesting because you point this out, Heather. I think about if you look at, we'll use Zillow just as, because Zillow and Opendoor went head to head on the iBuying.
They did.
Sort of.
Now they're
Zillow put their toe in the pool.
That wasn't the reason I was going to use that example.
Sorry.
I was going to make the comment that, everyone, all these companies, all of them talk about, we're going to get into real estate, and then we're going to have this, and then we're going to get attach rate on mortgage and title.
Attach rate on mortgage is my favorite.
And I'm like, and every time I listen to one of these things, I go, well, let's see. Zillow,
well, they've always got a crazy attach rate, like 50%.
Or just just in general, like if you think about Zillow's attach rate on mortgage, it was atrocious until about a year ago, 100%. When there were we'll just say, strong incentives to create attach rate. What? I'm just saying that there was a strong.
I just don't want to get deposed.
No, I'm just saying they had to find a way, which is my point here.
Yes.
To get involved with the agent-client relationship to influence the client to use the mortgage company was my point. And like everyone, I find it so, because Keith and I get lots of pitches, because you can imagine, about use this product and this is what it is, and we ask the same questions, and we're staring at them going like, you have no idea at all fundamentally how this industry operates. And the comment I was only going to make here was, I don't know if it's in other industries, but I've been doing this a long time as well. People severely underestimate the emotional relationship that occurs between a buyer and an agent, and a seller and an agent, and the influence that agent has on everything.
Yep.
And so it's amazing to me that companies still haven't figured that out, that people don't just want to go online and get a mortgage. They may, but they want to ask somebody and get feedback and have a conversation. Am I getting the best deal? And who are you? And I'm going to talk to my friend because I'm only doing this a few times in my life. That's the part I think everybody misses, is that it's very infrequent. And so there's a lot of trust that occurs.
It's very infrequent and a huge emotional experience, right? And like, unless you've done it a lot of times, and even then, like I've flipped a bunch of houses in my life, But whenever I sell the house I live in, I turn into such a normal seller. Like, I'm typing the text to the agent because I don't ever list my own properties. How many came through the open house? And I'm like, Keith, don't send this text. You're such a seller right now. But I can't help myself. I want to know, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the emotions of it are really, really different.
Yeah.
So just to put a bow on this, because Keith asked this question earlier, do you think that they're obviously Opendoor, Zillow imploded from that department at least, and Opendoor is moving in some new directions, it seems like. Do you think the iBuying comes back in a different type of market? Were there lessons learned in that process, or what's your take on that?
I mean, I think tremendous lessons were learned. The bulk of the issue was a macro environment that Opendoor didn't reliably predict. And it was really hard to turn the ship with the amount of cash that had been deployed into analysis that was based on something that didn't accurately predict the future.
Right.
And so, are they navigating it well now? Yeah. I mean,
said another way, things that work in a nuclear hot market don't always work in a slower market. Is that what you meant? Did I hear that correctly?
You heard that. And also the cost of money. I mean, the way the rate went up and how that impacted their capital markets, and that was a big deal. And at scale, it was tremendous. They lost $1 billion in a quarter. Yeah. And so we take that in. And
currently selling today for $1.91 a share, just if anyone's
Don't
curious.
tell me. I only allow myself to look every 3 months.
My bad, Heather. Sorry about that.
So let's move this to another subject, because it is relevant. I would love your take, because obviously, you're an investor, you're involved in lots of sides of the industry and disruption side. So I'm going to kind of start that with the disruption comment. Let's talk about, we're now past August 17th. I'm not going to rehash this stuff because everybody knows what it is. What is your take on how this all plays out? Let's go down that road. What do you think the disruption will look like in the industry, and your opinion on all of it?
Well, last month I was on stage with Brian Boero in Dallas. And
Lucky.
He asked me, so you were there, right, Keith?
Mm-hmm. We both were, yeah.
Okay, so...
She only remembers me, though.
That is true.
So Brian asked me, Heather, do you think this is a fork in the road for the industry, or do you think it's a speed bump? And I answered, I hope it's a fork in the road. I hope that we are transitioning into a different reality as professionals, and also in the way we deliver the consumer the experience. And I think what that requires, and this is like a really good Ken Jenny quote, we cannot keep doing what we should be doing first, last. Like last things first. This needs to happen, right? Yeah. And the other thing is we can't deploy technology to old processes. We have to evolve our actual process and then evolve the technology to that. And so I am hopeful that we are going to get over this problem as an industry together and level up on both counts. And that we're going to hold ourselves to a higher level of professionalism. I think we all want it. I think the ones who love this industry actually want that. I don't find anybody walking around going, no, I don't think we should be more professional. I mean, there's the ones that walk around and go, we are professionals. We never do those things. Like, yes, you fucking do. Yes, you know you do. I'm walking around conferences and I'm hearing literally people saying, as they're on the stage talking about the settlement, did you see that she posted a 0% commission? Do you think I'm showing that house? Really? Right. Like we're going to,
I mean, all you had to do is go in any of the social media forums the past few months and just want to cry. Like just put your head, you just want to be like, oh my God, and the lawyers and the DOJ is in all that shit too. They're literally watching all this stuff.
They are. Yeah. So I thought what Nakia said in the pod that you guys did with her last week was like one of the most thoughtful things, and it's not being said enough, that we need to really understand what we're saying matters. That it's being watched, it's being listened to, and we need to curate that and care about the impact and the effect of those things. And so I loved that she said it. I thought it was sort of like slipped in there and it needed more exposure to how important it was.
So we're bad interviewers.
No,
I'm just kidding.
I think she needs to get out there more.
I agree.
We agree. So we obviously know she's the permanent CEO, so she's going to be doing more of that.
Congratulations!
Congratulations.
We do. We're excited to do that and help her succeed, because there is importance in what they're doing over there. It's a great comment, by the way. But I'm just going to add, I don't know how we do that. We have 1.5 million independent contractors running around like.
Well, that's my question. Like anytime, so you guys both go to more conferences than I do, but when I go, I always hear this: we need more professionalism, right? But that's such a meaningless statement, right? Like it's not meaningless. It's just, what does that mean? How? Right? Yeah. Like, okay, great. Everyone agrees. Like, I could tell you water's wet. That's not super beneficial, right? So saying we need more professionalism matters, but how? Because as soon as you start to talk about how, the wheels come immediately off the fun bus, right? Like, do you want to make it a 4-year degree required? Well, everyone that I talk to that doesn't have a 4-year degree, it's like, no, we don't need that, right? Are you, okay, what about a 2-year degree? Are you going to make everyone who's currently in it go back and get that 2-year degree?
Okay. You sound like Congress with budget cuts.
Well, I'm just saying.
I don't want to cut my shit. I want to cut their shit.
Right. So, I wish someone would take this. We need to be more professional as an industry and really build a platform around it, because shouldn't
NAR do that?
Well, licensing is state level, ironically, and that requires.
I mean, they could lead it. I agree with you. They could be leading it.
They need to be more prescriptive in what that actually means.
Yeah.
And I think we all need to. I'm a broker. James is a broker. Are you a broker too, Keith? So, but we have an obligation or a duty to hold the standard of professionalism inside of our organizations. Like that's one of the rules.
Yeah, start there.
Nobody's ever told us how to do that. Nobody.
No, there's plenty of rules, but we don't ever
there's
like
rules,
no one.
To have your files checked, have them signed, have your, it's.
Do you know why that won't? To be clear, I'm not disagreeing with you. I love the idea, but do you know why it won't work? Is because nobody wants to do anything to piss off their agents, because they'll walk down the street to the next broker, and those deals walk out the door. And so all these big brokers talk about it. All of them are like, yeah, we should do it, as long as he or she does it and he or she does it, I'll do it. Otherwise, I don't want to be the one to piss everybody off and then they leave.
Yeah, you're right.
And then round and round and round and round and round we go, which is the conversation we've been having my entire life.
Yeah, the first one over the wall usually dies, right?
That's a great way to put it, Keith.
That's what I'm here for.
He's the Viking. Go Viking, go.
So back to my trial by combat is another thread that I weave through podcast episodes. But
let's move this to a lot of what you're involved in right now. So you're an operating partner in venture fund. Is that correct? Did I get that correct? Or you're doing
okay. It's one of the things I do.
One of the things you do. Okay. And you're advising a lot of venture funds as well. Is that another part of it?
I advise founders mostly.
Got it. Okay.
I've worked with several hundred founders since I became a free agent after exiting Opendoor.
Got it.
And
okay.
So I work with founders and advise VCs on Proptech and FinTech. And
what is either cool new tech or things that you're excited about that you're seeing that are going to be in our industry, since you're on the front line of all of that?
Okay, well, I am going to derail because you could say all the kind of, normal stuff like AI this and AI that. Let's not do that. What I think is super interesting, and this is because I have a passion for affordability and accessibility and equality in housing. This is what gets me up in the morning. And where I think we actually see the needle massively move for this is in construction technology. And there is some really cool stuff going on right now. And there's also you think we're ripe for innovation over here in real estate and or mortgage. Okay, we are. There's room. But over in construction, this is like dark ages stuff. And we have so much room. So I went to the International Builders Show a year ago in Vegas. And this is massive. If you haven't been to this event, it's incredible. Yeah. Okay.
It's at the same time of our conference. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. Well, they do both of the convention centers. Yeah. You got to take the Tesla loop to get around. I highly recommend that. And then what happens though is you go to the startup zone and it's less than 1% of the dedicated floor space. of this event. Like there is literally nothing there to see. And then you go into the rooms where they're talking about offsite building or modular building, manufactured building. And the room is so full. Nobody can, the chairs are gone. They're sitting on the floor. They're sitting on the wall. They are hovering in this room, not wanting to leave as the next group is trying to press in and get their talk going, because this stuff is like, how do we do this? We know we need to do this. And the third thing is there's literally no women. So everywhere I went, I would look out across the conference hall and I'm looking across a sea of men and one woman, sea of men and one woman. And so I just like, there's infinite possibility here around how we build, who's doing it, how we fund it, and what the impact is on housing and then the quality of life and the accessibility of housing to more people.
Can I ask a follow up with that?
I have a couple too. So
yeah, because it's
let's
interesting.
linger here.
Yeah, we're going to spend a little time here. It's obviously a massive issue that's finally being talked about because it's an election year. Of course, they're going to talk about it now. I say they, referring to both
All
parties.
Politicians.
And it's been an issue for a long time. It's not like anything new. We've been having this problem since 2008. It's been getting worse and progressively worse. Why is it that it feels like to me, and I follow this stuff because it's related to our industry, I look at housing policy and so much of it is completely archaic in the way that they want to approach things versus, to your point, sitting down and looking at new innovations for how we build cheaper housing, or just there's just so many things. You hear the same shit out of DC all the time about some type of credit for a first-time home buyer. Not that I'm saying that's a bad thing, for clarity. I'm just like there's nothing new coming out of this stuff, and it drives me insane when we know that most of the issues are related to cost to build product. Like that's fundamentally one of the main mechanisms. It's like, what's your take on that? Just having been to the builder show and looking at stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I've not only been to the builders show, which is like, we're still sitting in the dark ages of the types of conversations they're even having in those rooms in terms of where it's going to go over the, I think if we're going to see the massive change, it's going to come through construction technology and innovation. That's where we're really going to see impact happening in our industry. So back to DC, I also attended the HUD Innovative Housing Showcase in June of this year. And I talked to no less than 3,000 people personally on the National Mall during the course of the 4 days that we were set up in an exhibit there. And people are so hungry to have a home that it's like we're no longer living in the 3-bedroom, 2-bath starter home world. We're living in please just give me, 180 square feet that I can own and call my home, right? That's what people want. They're so done with the ideal American dream big house situation. They just want a home. And the things they're willing to compromise or give up for that are immense compared to like our generation and, what our expectations were coming out of college and getting married and buying a house and all those sorts of things. But the problem is that then I go and talk to people who are, sitting at Department of Energy, who has a tremendous amount of money to deploy into innovation about how we build, and to Fannie Mae or to FHA or to the ancillary coalitions that are around them. Nobody can get anything done because this department doesn't talk to this department and this money is dog-eared for this and can't go to that. Or we have this regulation that's tied up in old Dodd-Frank bullshit that we can't get around anymore. And nobody actually is aligned anywhere to have these conversations. And it's absolute madness. It's absolute madness. And any of these platforms that you hear, like the housing plan that, we're hearing about from the candidates that are up for election, or at the, state level here in California, we have certain mandates that have come from the government. But I sat down with city planners at the level where they actually need to execute these things, and they cannot. They literally cannot. They're even given money towards it. But because of the way the regulations are and the way the zoning is, and or where the land is held, or the way that the cost to build actually is after you go through the RFP process, you can't get anything done.
This is my biggest frustration when people, I think deeply about affordability all the time. And it's something
passion.
It is something that I'm And when I talk to people about affordability, they just say, well, the supply side, bro. Like supply side's how we're going to fix it. We just need to build more houses. And if you go like 3 steps, you don't have to go all the way down the rabbit hole. It just is not, that's not going to happen. It is so fragmented. And
no, it's too expensive.
Yeah.
So one of the reports that came out recently was, I'm going to get this wrong, so we'll have to clip it back, but it's
don't worry about it. We'll figure
47% of the costs for new construction and multifamily goes towards
permit,
the requirements, the regulations, satisfy. So these builders are like, yeah, we'd like to build for multifamily, but it is cost prohibitive, and it's not even at the land level.
Right. No, right. It's the permitting and the process for getting approval. And then I've not been to the big builder show, but I've been to some of these prefab places or where they're prefabbing walls or 3D printing homes.
Oh my gosh, there's such cool stuff going on.
There is, but the cost savings from my limited research, which is very limited, but the couple of ones that I've looked at, there's a pain to switching, right? There's a cost associated with switching, and the cost savings are not dramatic enough to really make a builder developer want to go through the pain of switching. How far am I wrong? You can tell me I'm wrong.
It's somewhat true. It's somewhat true. And the problem is more that you have so many stakeholders along the process, and you have the regulations that are different depending on, so it's very hard to standardize these things. Yeah. And so when we were at the HUD Innovative Housing Show, the number one word everybody was saying is standardization. We have to, and that needs to happen at the highest level. This is where we really need Washington to help us.
Yeah, even something as simple as like, in order to get it financed, if it's assembled somewhere else and shipped there, and then like, is that a house or is that a modular house or is that?
Yeah, and these things are not truly defined yet.
Correct.
We're figuring them out, and they need to figure it out faster. Like, this cannot be a 10-year arc. They need to get this done.
But the big thing that you've helped me learn today, which is part of the reason that I love doing this podcast, is the right answer isn't to the supply side problem, isn't the government. The right answer to the supply side problem is capitalism. And if you can find a way that builders could build more homes more cheaply, more quickly, they will make more money. They will implement these changes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what I would love to see is a bridge between venture capital innovators and the public sector. Like, we've got to come together around the table and put the right incentives in place for developers to do these things, and to have the assurance that when they get to the other end, I mean, they're willing to invest. Developers already outlay tremendous amounts of capital just to get a project off the ground, at risk that it's going to be shot down when they get done with their environmental review. They'll be out millions of dollars at that point because of some, issue that comes up in the environmental review.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right. We got a couple final questions to do here. Okay. So you're writing, I heard you're writing a book. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Tell us about it.
And can I have it?
I don't know if you want it, Keith.
Oh, well, okay. I read a lot of books, but maybe I don't. What's
Not 7 simultaneously, but
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be a book, but it ended up being, I think that when I talk about things, I have a lot of words. And sometimes when you pull it into simplicity, it comes out as poetry. And so what I've written is an analysis, or my own journey through the Stoic principles in a poetic form. And the first book is largely encapsulating the topic of love. And this is a controversial approach to why we should go about the business of love in a different way, and how that journey can also be simultaneous with a journey into oneself for solitude and aloneness, and becoming whole and complete, so that you actually have the capacity to generate what we're capable of as human beings through the objective or outcome of love.
So a Proptech book.
Yeah, exactly.
I would definitely read that book because Stoic philosophy is something I'm very much into. And then I have a business there. I've given talks on this, but curiosity and love are two of behavioral traits that I think are critically important to success.
I did
Keith
not
also
know
likes
that
to
about
do-
you, Keith. We need to have lunch. I'm
No,
serious.
you guys can have drinks together and nerd out on this stuff. Keith also is he likes to go
What is this gonna be?
introspective and goes often to do silent meditation.
I do.
which-
I have a 4-day silent meditation retreat coming up. 4 days.
Is
no
it
talking.
Vipassana or are you
It's different. Yeah, I
different?
could tell you
Okay.
about it offline, but
Yeah,
it's
okay,
Seriously,
we're
along
he's not
those
gonna
lines.
make it. It's impossible.
Yeah.
There's no way. I'm going to get a
stop.
text about halfway through.
No way. No, you won't.
All right.
No, you
let's
can
Let's do the last question we always ask. So,
let's wrap on this.
Yeah.
if you were an agent or a brokerage, what's the one thing you'd implement today to push your business forward?
I mean, I think if I were running a team right now, I would be getting very involved in professional oversight with them. And I think that's doing the right thing by the consumer and where we're at in the moment. I also think it's a proactive thing to do as a broker, because I think we have a cascade of lawsuits that are coming, and we should all be doing our part to shore up our own due diligence to say, hey, I'm trying. Nothing's been prescriptive. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm trying. And so that's what I would, focus on.
That's good. That's getting everybody to think about where you need to be and to some degree stop holding on from the past too. So love it. Heather, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah.
We truly appreciate all that feedback. It's great conversation on new home development, tech, and everything else. I haven't actually had that discussion on the pod, so it was interesting and insightful. And you and Keith can nerd out on Marcus Aurelius. So
right. That happened.
Yeah. Thanks, Heather.
Appreciate you being here.
It's our job to say out loud what everybody's only thinking to themselves. It's your job to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode.